efficiency, precision, speed, effectiveness, accuracy. All these and more are things we think of as characteristically German. Here's another one: dying. Europe faces the reintroduction of a Germany desperate to preserve its post-war gains in an environment where mere survival is beyond its ability. From an economic point of view, Germany's geography is too good. Between the Rhine, Elbe, Oder, Danube, and a half-dozen minor rivers, Germany boasts about 2,000 miles of natural waterway. The Rhine and Elbe access the North Sea. The Oder empties to the Baltic, and the Danube winds to the Black, and from there, the Mediterranean. Germany's river footprints grant it the best economic access of any territory in Europe, arguably of any territory in the world. But what makes sense economically does not always make sense in other ways. Squatting squarely amid the Elbe, Rhine, and Upper Danube are Germany's central uplands, a rugged, densely forested mountain knot that resists infrastructure even in the 21st century. Germans tend to live in an inverted V, roughly following the Rhine and Elbe, arcing around the central uplands. German lands are traditionally both Europe's richest lands and their most separated. The lands at Germany's edges are its core territories. Historically, other, more consolidated European powers have had a breezy time of taking what they want from the Germans. The early Germans dealt with this the only way they could, by organizing into something better: a stronger educational system, a better workforce, more reliable financing, more productive manufacturing systems. Yet the geographic separation of the central uplands made it impossible for the pre-industrial Germans to do this at the national level. Civic governments became responsible for issues of finance and infrastructure, and education and foreign policy normally reserved for national authorities. Germany's independent city-states tended to develop organizational capabilities at the local level far superior to those at the national level of their much larger neighbors. Excellent civil government is part and parcel of what it means to be German. For most of German history, there was no Germany. Identities and competencies were a strictly local and regional affair. Nearly all German cities have a lengthy stretch in their past in which they were the core of a small German kingdom. Only the most successful of these German statelets, Prussia, a heavily militarized state that originated in the northeastern German lands, ever got big enough to achieve any economies of scale. The arrival of the industrial technologies in German lands in the 1840s and 1850s found fertile ground in dozens of advanced cities that could all apply all the technologies all at once. Among the first things this constellation of German urban regions did was run industrial road and rail links to one another. German industrialization made German unification not only possible, but inevitable. Some German communities, used to functioning as independent powers, resisted. So did all the Germans' neighbors, who rather enjoyed having shattered, easily exploitable people next door. But with new roads and rails enabling direct inter-German commerce and cultural consolidation, they were denying reality. Between 1864 and 1871, the various German statelets found themselves on multiple sides of three major wars. By the end of 1871, it was all over. A unified Germany was, finally, born. The fusing of Germany's industrialization and unification processes shaped Europe's next several decades. Contemporary Germany's biggest problem is demographic. When Germany industrialized, the entire country did so at once, which means it also urbanized all at once, which means the German birth rate started falling throughout German lands all at once, and it never stopped. Birth rates might tick up on occasion during economic booms, but with most Germans living in cramped conditions, there's a big difference between deciding to try for a second kid and a third one. About the only thing that encourages people to have more kids is for people to have more space. That's why Germany did have a baby boomlet during a period they understandably don't enjoy discussing. The Lebensraum era of the late 1930s, when Germany was busy annexing its neighbors and getting physically bigger. Germany's World War II defeat wasn't simply economically, culturally, and militarily jarring. It physically reduced the size of post-war Germany by roughly a quarter. The post-war governments of Germany's neighbors forcibly ejected the Germans living in the formerly German lands. Post-war German authorities almost universally settled these expellees, who accounted for about 18% of the population of the combined West Germany and East Germany, in urban apartments with little space for living, much less procreating. Contemporary German social stability is predicated upon a generous, ironclad, cradle-to-grave system of government services. Germany has been able to afford it because of a triple quirk in its demographic structure. Both East and West Germany enjoyed a brief baby boom between 1955 and 1965. That generation has been working and paying taxes for decades, and in the 2010s is at the height of its earning and tax-paying years. Germany's boomers didn't have many children, circumscribing expenses for services like primary education and childcare. The state instead directs the savings into value-added items, like higher education and infrastructure. Some 8 million Germans died in the world wars, gutting populations that would have been retirees in the 1970s, 1980s, 1990s, and 2000s. High tax receipts plus few dependents equals excellent government finances. But this golden age of high tax receipts and low government payouts is ending. With the exception of the Lebensraum, German reproductive rates have been edging down for 16 decades and are now far past terminal. The nearly childless German baby boomer generation enters mass retirement in the 2020s, cursing contemporary Germany with a collapse in productive capacity, a collapse in tax receipts, a collapse in consumption, and an explosion of state outlays for pensions and health care. As soon as 2030, the young generation entering the workforce will be less than half the size of the boomer generation retiring. In any normal country, this would spell economic and social failure. Such ruin assumes that economic trends in Germany are positive. The quest for efficiency and quality, so central to German identity, comes at a cost. All those local and regional German governments try to capture private savings to fund community goals, leaving little in the way of financial resources for the development of a consumption-centric culture. Pair high production with low consumption, and the only option is to export the difference. Late 1800s Imperial Germany was able to absorb its output because then, like 1990s China, Germany was industrializing. But by 1900, over half the population had moved off the farm, making it the world's first majority urbanized country. An achievement, yes, but there was nowhere else for its production to go, except abroad. The mix of overproduction and subsequent imperial trade barriers ensured a litany of recessions, price crashes, and general economic dislocation. European interstate competition, already political, became deeply economic as well. It was only a matter of time until it became strategic. The first of those strategic competitions, World War I, ended with German defeat and kicked off the Great Depression, which struck nowhere worse than where it started, in Germany. Americana tells tales of Depression-era city folk returning to the farms to work the land during the Depression's deepest years. Not so in Germany, where the majority of Germans had been living in cities for decades. The only thing the Germans could do to keep costs down was to not have children. Germany's post-Cold War unification was a phenomenal national achievement, but that